Um, First, before we visited John Farrell, put that on your professional bucket list of things to do. It's a great operation and it's a great place to see real field work in action. Also then, because this essentially is a presentation that spans 3 decades, I just want to acknowledge that this is just a small number of the people that have worked on this project over the years, and there are many more people. You want to go full screen? Okay. There. Is that better? Okay. And I also want to thank the Queen's University Biology Station that was really our home away from home for the entirety of this study. And we still work every year we're allowed to get there at the biology station. Okay, so to start out with, to set the stage, because survival at all stages is so influenced by environmental factors, which it is for bass, smallmouth bass recruitment does not depend upon the amount of successful reproduction. That's traditional thinking. So angling, nesting bass has no impacts on recruitment. Our hypothesis, as one might suggest or expect, is very different from that. And we propose that even though survival at all stages is influenced by environmental factors, recruitment still depends on the amount of successful reproduction. And so, because angling individual nesting bass decreases their reproductive success, it also reduces lake-wide recruitment. So to test that, and in response to voiced concerns by the guides in the area that there was a lot of illegal preseason bass angling going on, we launched an annual survey of bass spawning and recruitment activities in Opinicon Lake and some other water bodies around Southern Ontario as well, starting in 1990. And for this, we would snorkel every year. We would snorkel a set of standardized transects, and we'd snorkel every 3 to 5 days. So we located, tagged, and mapped all of the nests, all the bass nests. We recorded species, total length, spawning date, and mating success, which is the number of eggs that each one of these nests was getting in a score of 1 to 5. Then we monitored the presence and absence of the parental male to determine whether or not that nest was successful. And if they abandoned the nest before the fry reached independence, those fry were quickly consumed by predators, and it had a reproductive success of 0. But based on the egg scores, then we could determine by summing all of the expected fry numbers from the successful nests, we could come up with a lake-wide reproductive success count. Then the next year, we would swim those same transects later on in the summer so that they were 1+ years old, and we'd visually count 1+ and 2+ bass, and that was our annual recruitment numbers. So what I want to do is go through the history from 1990 to 2017 and show on this graph here a bunch of spawning, recruitment, and angling metrics. And what to simplify things, I've lumped them into 5 or 6 year segments here and to average them. And then I've standardized them all to what the original 1990 to 1994 sample was. So they were always set at 100% and everything else is relative to that. So here is the first metric. This is the total number of nests in the transects with eggs in them. And it's really a surrogate for the number of males that were spawning each year. And you could see that it was sort of flat, but then started to go down. And over the last 10 to 12 years, it has decreased by 20%. This shows the number of eggs spawned, which is essentially a surrogate for the number of females that are out there spawning. And likewise, it decreased even maybe a little bit more to maybe 70 or down to 70%. But now things get a little bit even more distinct. So this is the number of successful nests. Out of all of those nests that got eggs, how many were actually successful at raising independent broods? And so compared to the first set of years in 1990, 1994, we were getting half the number for the last 4 years of the study, 5 years or whatever. So 50% decrease. And the success rate was significantly lower than earlier years. That was mirrored as well by the total number of successful fry, as would be expected. So there are the spawning, that's the spawning trajectory over the last 27 years or whatever. Here is the recruitment data. That is the number of 1+ juveniles that we visually counted every year. And it has dropped spectacularly to 30% of the original values. So these are pretty alarming statistics. And one might ask, well, what is causing that? And our hypothesis predicts that it was angling. And that's what's supported with this figure. The black line is actually hook wounds on nesting male bass. So during our swims, we inspect every male that's there and find whether or not it's been hook wounded. And over the since the 2000, the amount of hook wounding has tripled in Opinicon Lake, suggesting that the pressure of illegal angling also tripled. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the closed season regulation is not working. It's failing miserably in protecting bass. And on average in these lakes, up through these times, the last 5 or 10 years, we estimate that every male bass on average in these lakes around Opinicon was caught 2 or more times. So if that regulation is not working, what should we be doing? And we're proposing that instead of a closed season, which is unenforceable, has no, is not working at all, that we trade that and replace it with bass spawning sanctuaries, which would be areas like the orange areas suggested in this diagram, this map of Opinicon Lake, where all fishing would be off limits just during the spawning seasons and through real spawning seasons, not the 3rd Saturday in June, which doesn't protect all that many fish in many lakes. So what would happen is under these circumstances in this area, which protects about 20 to 25% of the surface area, or the shoreline area, in fact, we could protect 60% of the largemouth bass and well over 80, almost 90% of the smallmouth bass nests. And in this situation, at least some of those fish would actually be protected. And so we were working to collect some early data. We were hoping to have a pilot study, a backy design. So we were going to collect before the tests would go through. And so we were swimming in 2019. We were swimming transects that would be in the sanctuary and ones that would be out of the sanctuary to get baseline data so that when sanctuaries would be put on, we could test the difference. And we did that in 2019, but then 2020 hit. Well, that changed everything because COVID hit. So I'm going to show you a bit of metrics from those 2 years. In 2020, there was almost no fishing because tourism was shut down, cottagers didn't get there, and American bass boats were not allowed to cross the border. Yeah, so fishing came off very different. And as you can see, it's documented in the hook wounding rates. In 2019 was the highest ever. In 2020, almost no hook wounding. And when we start looking at the metrics, well, we didn't see that much difference in the nests with eggs or eggs spawned. The amount of adult bass spawning both years was about the same. In fact, it was higher in 2019 because they were re-nesting from abandoned nests. But when you look at the successful nests, 2019 was the lowest on record and 2020 was the highest on record of successful nests. And when you look at rates, they were off scale. Likewise, the number of surviving fry. But the bottom line is the juveniles. And we have almost no year class at all produced in 2019. And that's from bluebird weekends in Memorial Day and Victoria Day, where the nesting bass during this closed season were absolutely hammered by illegal fishing. This year, or 2020, however, we actually don't know what that value is. It's an open circle because we need to get those data in this July and August. However, we think it's going to be even much higher than what we've represented there, because this past year, when we were swimming for the 2019, we saw loads of young of the year, which we have never seen in 30 years before. So we expect that the year class there will be huge. So the bottom line is, does angling for nesting bass really impact lake-wide recruitment? is very clear that the answer is yes, and we have manipulative experiments to prove that as well. So what does this really mean? It means we need to replace the unenforceable and ineffective closed season regulation. It's just not working. It doesn't protect any bass, and replace that with a regulation that uses bass spawning sanctuaries to really provide protection for at least some bass in the lake. And if we can't do that, then in the near future, the bass fisheries in Opinicon and lakes like it are going to continue to tank. Thank you.